Sunday, June 26, 2022, Maneco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. Yes, today we're gonna talk about the day I crossed paths with President Nixon. Yes, the man who closed the gold window. And it was less than a year before he did it. Did I have a word with him? Well, you'll find out in a minute. And this is a story that is very interesting, and I've told people over the years. But lately I've been thinking about it, and also about the fact that I've been trying to warn the public, even before I started this channel, about the fraudulent nature, really, of our monetary system ever since President Nixon closed the gold window on August 15th, 1971. As John Exter said in 1972, and John Exter used to work for the New York Fed, he advised Paul Volcker at Camp David when they were deciding to close the gold window that August of 1971. He said that after the closure of the gold window, the dollar was a I owe you nothing. And as Mr. Putin said recently at the SPIEF conference, yes, the dollar is a mythical currency. It's not backed by anything. It's unbacked debt. And did I know about this back in 71 when I was about 6 years old? No, I didn't. And that's why I want to talk a little bit about fate, which is something I've never thought about. But lately I've been thinking about it because there's a lot of things going on in the system. And I thought of the old story of President Nixon. And before I tell you the story, let's go through the definition of fate, because we generally know what fate is, but I like to read it to you. It says it's the development of events outside a person's control, regarded as predetermined by a supernatural power. So there you go. Some people might not agree that fate is a tool or something in one's life, and I've never thought about it, as I said, but lately I've been wondering, about fate and what happened back in 1970. So I'll tell you the story. As many of you know, I grew up in Brazil. My dad was a businessman. And by the time I was 5, around 1970, I had 2 older sisters. They were 6 or 7 and maybe 10 or 11. My dad used to go a lot on business trips, especially to the US, to New York. So he decided to take the whole family on this business trip because we're getting older. I guess we were better behaved. I was about 5, I guess. I think it was towards the end of 1970. It was probably before October, or it could have been after October. So I might have been 5 or 6. I don't know. It's difficult to remember the exact date, but I do know that it was 1970 because I always remember growing up and thinking the first time we went abroad, my father took us on one of his business trips. It was 1970. So what happened in New York? Well, we were in a very nice hotel in New York. Well, it was the St. Regis Hotel. And I always remember I was walking with my parents in the lobby of the hotel. I don't remember what my sisters were doing. Maybe my parents brought me down because there was a nice store, little shop in the hotel, and I might have wanted to buy a sweet or something, so they were taking me there. So I walked with them across the lobby, and coming the other way was President Nixon, and he just walked past me, and I looked at him, and he looked at me, and we kept going. He went the other way, and I told my parents, "That's President Nixon," and they told me to be quiet. Because, that's not the thing you do. Oh, President Nixon. So I always remember that story. You know, I saw President Nixon, and I was 5 or 6, so I knew who he was. And yes, that story's always stayed with me, and I've told people about it. And of course, less than a year later, in August of 71, he went on to take that fateful decision, really. And some people might argue that the bankers made him do it, but at the end of the day, he was the president. He was where the buck stopped with, and he took the decision to suspend the convertibility of the dollar into gold, basically defaulting. And he said it was temporary. So it's been, that decision has been kind of temporary for over 50 years now. The 51st year completes, of course, August this year. And of course, there's a lot of people who talk about a jubilee, a 50-year jubilee. And that might be, I don't know, that might have something to do with what's going on monetarily, but I won't elaborate on that. Just to give you an idea, I remember as well, on this first trip, my father took us all to take some photos, some portraits in a place in New York. And that's how I looked when I saw President Nixon. That's me here. And I think I had a Mickey Mouse watch, as you can see here, that I was always into watches. So that's Monaco 64 when he crossed paths with President Nixon. So what's that got to do with fate? Well, here's the man who destroyed, really wrecked the monetary system that was set up after World War II. And here was me, who over 45 years later or 40 years later, started warning people about the monetary system. And 5 years or 6 years ago, I started reaching a lot more people here on YouTube. And hopefully, yes, I will have warned enough people to make a difference to people, because I think what's coming is unprecedented. We've never had a major reserve currency that will probably hyperinflate. Yes, you had the German mark, the Reichsmark, hyperinflated in 1923. But back then you had the US dollar and the British pound and the French franc that were as good as gold. So it wasn't that important. But the dollar itself now would be a huge event. And I think that's why Russia, China, and the other BRICS nations are getting together, because they know it's coming. They need to protect themselves. It's not even that they're challenging the dollar. They know that the dollar is going to be toast. Even President Putin in 2019 said that the dollar was, eventually going to go the way of the dodo bird. And by that, I mean the dollar as a major reserve currency. The currency will still be there, just like the British pound is still around, but nothing like it was in the 19th century, early 20th century, when it was the major reserve currency. So the reason I started thinking about this and fate, President Nixon, my encounter with President Nixon, albeit it was a brief encounter, it was a freak coincidence, because my dad was not involved in diplomacy or politics. He was a businessman. We happened to be in the hotel where President Nixon was. I'm not sure if he was staying there or if he went there to meet someone. But a few weeks ago, I received this from one of my longtime viewers from Japan. His handle is Rumpelstiltskin. He's an American in Japan. And so this Newsweek magazine is from August 30th, 1971. And it's the edition for Asia, for Japan. Of course, America has still a big presence in Japan militarily. So a lot of the servicemen read Newsweek, I guess. And it says the new dollar, Nixon's recovery plan, right? Well, that was couple weeks after he closed the gold window and changed the world forever. And we've had inflation since then. Yes, I think someone tweeted out yesterday that inflation has been non-transitory since August 15th, 1971. They've been able to hide it by changing the definition of it to CPI and doctoring that CPI. But what we're seeing now in terms of rising prices and all the commodities going through the roof, I think is the end of the Nixon dollar, the I owe you nothing dollar. So I've also gone through a few things here, some facts about Richard Milhous Nixon. So he was born on January 9th, 1913 in Yorba Linda, California. What's so important about his date of birth? Well, what's 1913? Well, that's when the Federal Reserve Act was passed through Congress. Yes, it was in late 1913, but it was the same year. And then you look at me. I was born October 3rd, 1964 in Brazil. And what's important about that? Well, it's the day of the year, that the Central Bank of Brazil was established. Yes, December 31st, 1964. So 51 years after Nixon was born, I was born, and the Central Bank of Brazil was born. The Federal Reserve was born in the same year as Richard Nixon. And he closed the gold window on August 15th, 1971. So you add this 51 number, which I thought was interesting. Some of you are really into numbers. I know one of my viewers is into numbers. I don't know if he watches me still. But if you add 51 to 1971, you get August 2022. So the Jubilee. So I don't know. I'm not trying to predict anything. And you might think this is silly, but I really wanted to get this off my chest to let you know a little bit more about myself and this brief encounter with a man who wrecked the monetary system. And it's interesting that I started looking into this really probably around the turn of the century. It's not like I encountered President Nixon and then a few years later I learned about the gold window and I said, I'm gonna tell people about this. No, it was accidental. It was kind of by fate. So that's what I'm trying to say here. So there you go. That's all I have to say for now. And yes, if you haven't been on one of my live streams or watched one of my live streams, it's tonight at 9 p.m. London time. So with that, I wish you all a great rest of the weekend. Take care. Bye.